I'm Jason. The world is yours, and today we have a story about UFC MMA fighter Khamzat Chimaev believes Jake Paul would defeat Nate Diaz in a potential boxing match, saying Nate Diaz is too old and too weak. Wow. Khamzat Chimaev believes Jake Paul would defeat Nate Diaz in a boxing match. Jake Paul signed a deal with the PFL Professional Fighters League earlier this year and spoke about an MMA fight slash boxing match, I guess two matches with Nate Diaz in the near future. So they would have an MMA fight and they would have a boxing match. It was prior to his fight with Tommy Fury that Jake Paul doubled down on his fight with Nate Diaz this year. That was prior to Nate the Fury fight, so that's very important. Speaking on the MMA Hour with Ariel Helwani, Jake Paul spoke about the matchup with Diaz, saying, "I think they're ready." Nate Diaz said, "I'm getting ready though Sunday, and we're going to line that one up ASAP. I think that's next. I think that's what the fans want, and that's what I want." There's been a lot of talk back and forth, but it's time to get down to business. I want to do one fight boxing, one fight MMA, but I'm not sure if Nate Diaz's team is fully in line with that, or I don't know if they realize how serious I am about that. I think they thought I was doing it for the hype. When asked about timing, Paul indicated maybe mid-year, sometime in the summer. Although nothing has been confirmed to date, Khamzat Chimaev has weighed in on the potential boxing matchup between Nate Diaz and Jake Paul. Somebody on Twitter, it says a clip from the MMA Hour with Ariel Helwani where Chimaev was asked about his thoughts on a Paul versus Diaz boxing match. Chimaev commented, Diaz weak, too old, 5 years before, go back 5 years, no. But now Diaz too old, his brother became old too. They both became old. Younger guys will come in and we take over. Let me see, is there anything else? Okay. Yeah. Okay, so this is a little bit surprising that Chimaev is talking about this recently. I guess he was asked about it here. Yeah, he was asked about it recently on the MMA Hour by Ariel Helwani. I don't really know why he would be asked about Jake Paul and Nate Diaz in a boxing match because Jake Paul is going to be fighting Tommy Fury later on this year in a boxing match. And it seems like the hype about Jake Paul, let's just be honest, definitely died off a lot more after he lost to Tommy Fury. As, you know, this article mentions that before the Tommy Fury fight, everybody was saying, okay, hey, if Jake Paul defeats Tommy Fury, maybe he, fights someone like Nate Diaz later on this year, as Jake Paul was saying in the mid-year. But after losing to Tommy Fury, obviously that fight doesn't seem to be happening anytime soon. We don't really know what's going on with Nate Diaz. There's been I know the Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship. They've been talking a lot about him recently. I've seen him at a few events at Bellator, right? Because he has the relationship with Scott Coker from Strikeforce, but we haven't really heard Nate Diaz's name in any, I wouldn't say celebrity boxing matches or any boxing matches at all. So we'll see what happens with later on with Nate Diaz. But, the connection with Chimaev and Nate Diaz is that this was actually supposed to be Chimaev's last fight. Well, it would have been Chimaev's last fight as Chimaev was scheduled to fight Nate Diaz in MMA last year at UFC 279 in Las Vegas. I think it was in Las Vegas, but Chimaev ended up coming into that welterweight fight. He weighed in about 7-8 pounds overweight. So the fight with Nate Diaz never happened. That's interesting, that he's now, not that he's now saying, but his opinion about the Diaz brothers is that they're too old and too weak. So I'm assuming that, obviously if he thinks Jake Paul could beat him, he's gonna beat Nate Diaz, but that fight never materialized. I wonder if I feel like Nate Diaz would reply to a story like that, like for an opponent who never fought Nate Diaz to come out and take a shot about Nate Diaz, I'm pretty sure Nate Diaz would be like, well, hold on, we were literally scheduled to fight last year and you didn't show up. So, I'm not even trying to hear your opinion, right, at all, right? So, and then you have the Jake Paul losing his last fight versus Tommy Fury. So I don't really know, I mean, in 30 minutes, I probably wouldn't ask Chimaev about, a exhibition boxing match between Jake Paul and Nate Diaz. But, that's what was asked, and that's why he was commenting about Nate Diaz fighting Jake Paul. But my question is, where's Chimaev at, right? His last scheduled opponent was versus Nate Diaz. He ended up missing weight there. He ended up fighting Kevin Holland, but he defeated Kevin Holland in the first round via a submission. He took no damage in that fight. That was last September. We haven't heard from Chimaev since then. And, the last I've heard was the only thing I've really heard from Chimaev is that his next fight probably will be in October of this year. So it'll be over a year and a month from the last time that we've actually seen Chimaev fight. I cannot give you one reason as to why Chimaev has not fought. I don't know. Chimaev gives us one reason. The UFC gives us another reason. His opponents gives us, everybody has a different reason as to why Chimaev has not fought since last year. But let me know your opinion of this story. Who do you think Chimaev should fight next? Who do you think Nate Diaz should fight next? And who do you think would win between Nate Diaz and Jake Paul in a boxing and MMA match? I'm Jason, the world is yours. Today we had a story about UFC MMA fighter Khamzat Chimaev believes Nate Diaz would be defeated in a boxing match by Jake Paul, calling Nate Diaz too old and too weak. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the $1 donation button, and please tune in to the next video on this channel. Thanks a million for watching.